watching all this, though, and wondering, and I'd love Mike Memley's thoughts on this, too. You know, we all covered impeachment as though it were a parallel undertaking for the country from the Democratic primary. And our analysis and the feeling was that it took those candidates away from running for president, the ones that had to serve as jurors ultimately at the end of that 3-month period. I wonder if voters have internalized some of Joe Biden's electability around the threat that Donald Trump obviously feels from him. Donald Trump is so terrified of running against Joe Biden that he risked his entire presidency. He bet the farm on his whole presidency to kill him off politically. And he's still
enlisting a foreign country.
As recently as last week, he asked an associate, you know, my Ukraine call, you read that, right? That was perfect, right? He's still obsessed with the work he did to try to smear Joe Biden. And I wonder, you know, we throw around electability as though it exists in a vacuum for voters. Voters watched, and wherever you came down as a voter on impeachment, you knew that Donald Trump wanted to sort of soil the reputation and the family name of the Bidens so desperately that he asked a foreign country to dirty him up, to do what Bill Barr wouldn't do, to investigate him and prosecute him. So I wonder if at some level the impeachment sort of baggage that was internalized was Donald Trump's trepidation about running against this guy. And I wonder if Democratic voters didn't think, well, shouldn't we sort of give another look at the guy that Trump is that scared of?
I would add to that the 100% obedient Ron Johnson of Wisconsin.
Is that it again?
Invoking Burisma again in a letter. So, Mike Memley, you've been listening to our conversation. You obviously just heard the news. Take on any or all of it.
Well, actually, I was interested in picking up where you left off, Brian, because around the time of the impeachment trial, there was a sense, of course, that Biden used it on the campaign trail, too, to say all of this energy and effort that the Trump and his allies put into trying to dislodge me as the potential foe shows that they're scared of me. But there was some sense after the results came in from Iowa, yes, Biden had a lot of other problems with his campaign in Iowa, especially in organization, but that maybe Joni Ernst, the senator from Iowa, was right when she raised the prospect of those arguments from the president's lawyers on the floor of the Senate may have weighed on Iowa voters, at least. And I think one of the questions going forward, when it looked like Biden was not a threat, all of a sudden Ukraine vanished from the lips of a lot of Republicans. Burisma was not heard from anymore. And there are insurance policies in the Senate Republican ranks of a potential Biden renaissance, including, yes, Ron Johnson, the senator from Wisconsin. There have been a number of requests put in to the Treasury Department for any and all records related to Burisma. That's a treasure trail, potentially, if they are turned over to Republican lawmakers, that will, again, bring that back. But I think it's interesting to also see how the Democratic Party is rallying around the former vice president at this point. And I think about a moment last night when Mayor Pete Buttigieg endorsed him in Texas. One of the moments, I think, that stand out from the perspective of Team Biden was the number of times Mayor Pete defended the vice president when the questions around Ukraine were raised. And I think you will see a closing of the ranks around Joe Biden again if and when the Republicans try to play that again.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.